a social phenomenon, a kind of social relationships, or a social, it depends. No, it depends. How do we? So this is something which is very general of thing. But at the same time, all theories, except we have one example of a theory, they always pertain to particular societies. As we know that after the coming of capitalism, most of the sociological theories, they tend to explain capitalism in their own ways. But they differ significantly from each other. For example, if you look at Marx's theory of capitalism, you will find very different explanations. If you look at Max Weber's theories, you will find another different explanation. And then if you look at Miles Rakim, you find another different explanation. Right? Now you all have, studied if you are students of sociology. Now what Marx does? Marx just argued that man is a biological being who has certain needs, and in order to fulfill those needs, man acts upon nature. When Marx wrote it, then gender issue did not come up, so he includes woman and it. So from there he begins to develop so many terms. Terms are nothing but, in fact, verbal expressions of a particular thing, like means of production, what means you use to produce, it is short term or that. And this is how Marx does it. Now, when we come to Max Weber does not analyze capitalism, capitalist society and relation. He talks about emergence of capitalism and its relationship with certain ideologies. And in particular, in one book, he talks about that how Protestantism could have been responsible for the emergence of capitalism in certain, societies. Now, it is here something very important, because when we do a theory, it is also very important that there must be an evidence to argue that. So if we say Protestantism, then we would say that since Protestantism started in 1517, it is only after 1517 that capitalism might have emerged. It doesn't happen like that. What happens is that capitalism emerged much earlier. It emerged in 14th century. Another very interesting thing, Max Weber, in which he talks about theory, authority. He talks about different kinds of authorities. He talks about different kinds of behavior patterns. And he basically tries to explain that how in capitalism, it is the legal rational authority which becomes very important, whereas the traditional authority has disappeared. But you go to Miles Rakim. Miles Rakim doesn't talk about this at all. What he talks about is, he talks about that how there is an increase in solidarity. They become more cohesive. They become more stable, because with structural differentiation, because so much of different kinds of occupations and works have come up, society has become highly differentiated. So therefore, as a result of which, it becomes more stable. Now imagine a society in which there are only two groups. They are fighting with each other. Societies will become very unstable. Recognizes that there are dangers to it. So if you look at these three people, the particular theorists about which everybody studies in sociology, you find that their primary concern has always been the study of the kind of society which was prevalent in the 19th century. And what they are trying to explain it, that what exactly is the nature of society. And please remember one thing, They just did not write it. Karl Marx collected a lot of data from British Museum, in which he studied factory inspectors' reports. He studied health commissioners' reports, and he gave a lot of data on that. And on that basis, he said that this is what is the case. And then his classical, chapter in Capital Volume 1 is how capitalism emerged. He doesn't say that this is how generally capitalism emerged. He says that there are only two conditions for capitalism to emerge: surplus labor and surplus capital accumulation. But he says that every country has its own path of capitalist development, but in England, it developed. He starts explaining that how capitalism developed in England. He does not talk about how capitalism developed in Europe or in the world. He never talks about it. In Capital Volume 1, if you go to that particular, this is something which is to be remembered. What is to be remembered is that when we give an explanation, we call it a theory, in which we use set of concepts and propositions, and these propositions are logically constructed. And so all sociological theories or social science theories are generally presented with a lot of evidence. And this evidence is available when we do that. Now let us look at Max Weber. Now we say that Max Weber just gives the theory of potential, ethic and spirit of capitalism. He does not use any data. No. in any library, you will find capitalism, this Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, and start reading it. And the moment you start reading it, my request to you is that in this particular book, Max Weber has used, it was not just trying to be a book, these are articles. Max Weber has given a lot of footnotes. Read those footnotes, and you will find that he begins with the argument. First, he talks about the difference between Oriental societies and Occidental societies, in which he talks about that in Occidental societies there was rationality, but then he says that if we look at those particular societies, those particular cities in Germany, where are in substantial number, and then let us look at them all as they do about data. And the he is giving is on the basis of the study. He says that Roman Catholics study humanities and social science, Protestant courses, and all that. And so therefore, a difference between Protestants and the Roman Catholics. He elaborates upon it. But the argument he builds is on the basis of data. On the basis of, what is data? Data is information collected on the basis of information which was collected by somebody else. Same is the case with Durkheim. Now, Durkheim, basically in one of his studies, he extensively uses statistics. That is suicide. But even in other studies, particularly his PhD work, that is Vision of Labor in the Society, he extensively depends on all others which are, and whether it is Spencer and many others, Taylor and all that, and tries to build an argument that this is how it happens. So one thing which we should remember, that the theories do not come from the blue, but they come from on the basis of the data, the information, the documents available of the period about which that explanation is offered. That's why there is a difference in data and theory, in the, what we call it sometimes fact and theory. Data in itself, as E.H. Carr would say in his what is history, he says that historical facts are like isolated pieces of fish, and the function of historian is to meaningfully connect them to make a fish, let us say. Now, which also means that we have data, we have collected it. No, but to connect it, meaningfully and make a kind of general explanation, this is something which is very, very important, and this is what is called theory and nothing else. It should not be taken. I'll come to another thing, then I will come to the question of policy. So, what happens is that the connection between, when we talk about that this is data and then this is the general kind of explanation, it answers certain questions. The fact which is given answers one thing, what is the case? But the theory which is offered, the explanation which is offered about the facts, is something which answers why is this the case and how is this the case. Now, this why and how is something which makes it general. We try to see that in all the similar phenomenon, this kind of explanation can be offered, and we can comprehend reality or a dynamics or relationship in this particular manner. Please remember that in sociology there is only one general theory, that is target-partial theory of action. But there also are problems, so I will not talk about it because it will become complex and unmanageable kind of thing. But it is here that we have one serious challenge for us. And this serious challenge started when Dept started raising question about Cole's positivism. Now, if we look at sciences, we find that in sciences, get to validation, verification, and this verification, when it occurs, a particular explanation is accepted by everybody in the profession. So, which means that, for example, Albert Einstein gave his E equal to mc here, sometimes in the first decade of the 20th century. But it took longer time for it to be verified, because it could only be verified when there was solar eclipse. Since I am not a theoretical physicist or anybody, I cannot explain what it will be. But in science or theory, when they are verified, they become theories, laws, and the earlier theories forward. They disappear, and then that theory, so long as it cannot be refuted, it remains there. And we have large number of examples of this in the history of science. But there is another aspect of social sciences. In social sciences, we do not have the depth of a theory. We do not say that this theory is no more alive or it is irrelevant. We always say that for me, this is how I understand it. Right? This is a very important aspect of sociological theory. Why this happens? This happens because all the sociological theories are based on certain domain assumptions. And the domain assumptions are related to nature of man and human relationships. So we are your basis that we assume something and then we construct this thing. We also do it in algebra. As Albert Einstein's uncle told him when he was a young boy, that algebra is the most fascinating form of mathematics. A value which you do not know, assume it to be x and then calculate it, At the end of the day, at the end of the equation, when you solve it, you will get the value of X. But in social sciences, it is not like this. The problem is what Dept said. Dept said that whenever we are constructing a theory about society which consists of human beings, we should always remember that we cannot do it the way we do it in the case of natural sciences. Because in the case of human societies, all humans have consciousness. And their reaction to a particular phenomenon is something particular, let us say, stimulus, which Ivan Pavlov used in the early 20th century in experiments, would be different. I give you an example of two countries. Correct me if I have named the countries wrongly. I think it was in Venezuela that demonetization of currency was done, and the reaction was so strong that the government had to withdraw it, the decision, and currency could not be demonetized. Demonetization did not happen. In 2016, we went for demonetization, and in India, Indians did not react. Why Indians did not react? This is something which we should ask, which also means that as a society, we perhaps are more accommodative, or it is possible to explain why we did not do it, and why we even then re-elected that government which claimed that we will have a lot of black money, and we will get a lot of black money and terrorism would stop, but nothing happened. But still we elected the same party. This particular thing we should know, then why this has happened. The moment we ask this question, it also substantiates Dept that to every situation, you do not expect to be found in similarness, but at the same time, it is important that there would always be an explanation. I'll give you one another explanation, example, which would help you, and it will connect with the whole question of policy. Since all of you do not belong to, including your teachers at the moment, to which I belong, the Vietnam War. I was in my Vietnam ended. It was over the president. But one of the very popular president of the United States was John Kennedy. And that was the time when Vietnam was in full swing. And since Kennedy was a product of Harvard University, which is regarded as #1 university in the world, he brought in large number of experts from Harvard as his advisors. One of them was W. Rostow, R-O-S-T-O-W. And he had a reputation of writing a book called An Anti-Communist Manifesto. Basically, a title was Stages of Economic Growth. Now, he argued, he gave his thesis that Vietnam War is going on because the economic condition of Vietnam is bad. If we introduce development programs and improve their economic condition, then this communist urgency would be defeated. One can ask the advisors that to prepare a plan and bring about economic development in southern Vietnam. North Vietnam was already with the communists. So then they introduced development programs at village level in Vietnam. And after 2 years or 3 years, it was observed that the villages in which the Americans poured in money for economic development and helped in the improvement of economic condition of the people, villagers, the communist movement became stronger there. There was more Viet Congy activity and other things. So which means that the relationship between insurgency and economic condition was proved wrong. So one theory was proved wrong, so then another theory came. Another theory was very interesting. It was, it came in 1968 by Davis. He said that if the people remain poor, things are stable. If the societies are very rich, things are fine. But when the poor countries begin to develop, when the economic conditions begin to improve, then there are a lot of expectation from the people. And when this happens, critical disturbance takes place. He says that most of the revolutions occurred, he talks about 2-3 revolutions, where this happened. So the argument was that why so many Viet Congese joined these insurgency, because took place, their expectations were raised. And when their expectations were raised, so then they started participating in the movement, insurgency movement. And then in 1970s, a theory came. It is called. The first was called revolution of the rising expectations. Then we have theory of deprivation. That the moment people have high expectations and they feel more deprivation, and then there is always a critical disturbance. So now you look at this. Now this theory has come from vacuum, come from blue. This theory has come from actual occurrences, actual conditions. So which again means that you cannot isolate theory from anything else. Theory makes the foundation because theory enables the framework through which we can understand reality. It does not mean that whatever theory says has to be correct. But that is the problem with social sciences, because in social sciences, unlike in natural sciences, there are variations in human conditions, social conditions, and social processes. We have culture, we have traditions with which everything has to work. So as a result of which, we cannot imagine that would be perfect. But over a period of time, we think that whenever we talk about it, we remember one thing. Theories generally are confused with ideologies. But always remember that basically theories are not ideologies. Ideologies generally come with political actions, not sociological theories. But it is very important that at the end of the day, we equip ourselves with some kind of a common framework, some kind of a common principle on which we can evaluate theories, evaluate facts, evaluate social processes. So we now have reached a stage where we have developed this particular ability. And on this basis, we can say that all those theories or all those societies which are based on the principles of equality, freedom, justice and inclusion are the most desirable societies. Or if we have to evaluate some societies on the basis of certain general principles, practical principles, then these are something which are universal principles where different societies could also be understood and to be seen that how this can happen. So let us now come to the policy question. Let me start with my personal experience. I started my career in a Northeastern University, then I came to an institute called, at that time it was called Punjab State Institute of Public Administration. It is now called Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Public Administration, Punjab. And it is here that we used to organize a lot of programs. One vested officers of the Punjab state, starting from IAS officers and then the other officers up to Singh. And there were two kinds of programs. One was induction program, in which we used to give them the some kind of orientation about Punjab and others. Another was the refresher programs. You also teachers went into it. And these IAS officers and others, they would come and we will claim a course. Government of India would send us the money and we will conduct that 10 days, 3 weeks, like this, or 1 week. And in each program, at the end of the day, at the end of the report, we had to write recommendations. After about two, three things, programs I organized, the first thing I used to write was the recommendations. But even when the program had not yet started, because the recommendations were the same, I started asking myself that why is it that we write recommendations, but we have not yet started the program. Why is that there could be a different recommendation, but it never happened? I give you another parallel example. The parallel example is that the Indian education system is declining. Nowhere in the history of India we find any report or comment which says that our education system has improved. No, then what should we do it? So far, whatever the government of India has done by way of some kind of policy has created more problems than solved it. But if we start with the times when the British introduced the educational system, latest Western education in India, till this date there is only one thing common. That is the examination system. And examination system has not been changed. And now universities can never think of changing the examination system, because by changing the examination system they will lose a lot of revenue. Now even when you have a common explanation, the policy and implementation which is required is not offered. In 1970, poverty, then Government of India came out with large number of programs. And one of the greatest things about those programs till the UPA one was that they always worked about that helping the people to generate assets and incomes. Whether it was integrated rural development program, and then whether it is rural employment guarantee scheme, it was that people work and then they will earn money and then they will survive. So this was a theory. But the moment you say that we will give you free rations, we will give you this, we will give you free freebies, we will give you tablets, we will give you computers, we are transforming large mass of people into beggars. Now, if we are transforming large number of people into beggars, then it also explains critically that why, according to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, data shows that a large number of people have stopped seeking jobs in India. Why? Because the principle on which we have constructed that has created all these problems. During pandemic, most of the developed countries give money to the people. No doubt about it, but they also made it sure that they are given work. Nobody dies of hunger. But Making this as a policy for catching votes or as a state policy is creating a crisis, and this crisis is a result of the fact that instead of encouraging people that they should work, we are telling people that just sit at home, take this little bit of thing and do this and that, you will survive. Now, so what happens is that whether you take rural development program, whether you take industrial policy, whether you take agriculture policy, there has to be a perspective. There has to be a theory behind it, that why do we want to do it, what exactly is the purpose of it, and how would it be carried out. The moment we would do it, we will think about these two, three things, we are entering into the realm of theory. Which theory don't bother about. All classical theories and other theories are for you to help you to make sense of reality. But it does not mean that you cannot have your understanding. You can have your understanding, and then you can work out that how it is possible for anybody to work and then develop policy and implementation, right? And I think I should stop here because in the sense that if you have questions, please ask, and then we will talk about it. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I am a research scholar of PhD, and sir, my research is drugs and all youth advantage. Sir, are any books you would suggest me for this?
You are talking about drug addiction in Jammu, Sakshi?
Right, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir, right.
Yeah. Now the thing is that when you talk about drug addiction, it is something one should understand that we have different theories of drug addiction.
Yes, sir.
One is what Howard Becker did it, outsiders, labeling theory. But however you go, it is something which is your own nature of objective. What kind of objective you have chosen, number one. Number two, how are you going to do it? Let me tell you something very interesting has happened in Punjab. From our department, Professor R.S. Sandhu did a study on drug addiction in Punjab. He collected data throughout Punjab, and then there is one table in his book in which he says that of the total drug addicts which were there, 70% of them in the sample were from the younger age, and that was specified from this age to this age.
Okay.
And in 2012 elections, Rahul of youth in Punjab is drug addict.
Okay, sir.
And no, so far, the only politician which has harmed the youth of Punjab, it is Rahul Gandhi's government. And then we had Udta Punjab and all that.
Right, sir.
Please remember one thing. Whenever you talk about a drug addiction, first of all, you identify what kind of drug you are talking about. And drugs are known by their effects. Like, one is that you have cannabis-based drugs, then you have opiates, you have cocaine, you have tobacco, you have alcohol, and all those kind of categories. You must have to see in terms of which category you are talking about. If you are talking about heroin, cocaine, kind of this thing, or you are talking about opium and poppy husk, there is a strong relationship between the economic condition of the addicts and the nature of addiction.
Right, sir.
Most of the poor people are shepherds. They use marijuana, which is charged and otherwise. And our cannabis is something which is also related with religion. All shepherds, they use cannabis. And then we have a Sikh sect called Nihans, they also drink cannabis. Now, so if you take all Nihans and they drink and then you are obviously it will come up. If you take cannabis and on Shivratri go to Mathura, you will get all kinds of things made up of bhang or cannabis. Like you are saying, kind of a thing. And this is most important thing in any study of drug addiction. So you must have a theory. Now, Howard Becker wrote this particular book, Outsiders of marijuana smokers. But now marijuana is legal in many of the states in America and in Canada. Once it is legal, do we say that it is not a drug or drug?
So it is still the drug.
State, society, and the medical definition of what we call it drug. Right? All these three things come in. And then it has to be seen that in what way we are doing it, kind of a thing. And that has to be understood. So for which you have to make a technical perspective that what exactly you want to understand.
Okay, sir.
And invariably, you might have come across so many news that there are rape parties. And these rape parties are always rich people who are organized. And let me tell you, countries no bar. Pakistan is also having its rape parties. So is India.
Yes,
And and this is something which is to be kept in mind. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. As I'm supervising her in here in Loudy Professional University, sir. So we were having the problem of how we can let a theoretical perspective for the same. Basically, she is looking upon what
I can't hear you.
Am I audible, sir?
No.
So Dr. Hilal Ahmed Dar is my supervisor at Lovely Professional University. So sir, he is probably saying, vote of thanks to you for all the elaboration that you have suggested us, sir. We are really grateful and thankful for that. Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I am Dannat and I am from Springdale Senior School. So, sir, it's my first year. I am very blank and we are told to do a research. We are told to make a research paper on any social evil we feel is, significant in our society. Because it's my first time to make a research paper, I really don't have an idea how to do it. So,
it is very easy, Jannat. Suppose you are planning to go to Delhi. The first thing is that you have to decide how will you go because you have so many alternatives. You can go by walking, you can cycle, you can go on motorcycle, you can go on car, bus, train or by air. This is the way to go about it. First of all, try to think of what exactly you want to do, which particular social problem you want to take. And then try to understand what is the nature of that problem and why that is a problem. ठीक है ना? uh, there could be some issue which may not be an evil, but it is there, right? But there are certain things which we say, yes, this is evil. Try to understand what it is. Then you try to explain that how, what kind of consequences and how this is happening, why this is happening, right? So start with this. And in the process, nowadays it is very easy, but don't solely depend upon it. Go to the Google search. Because if you are in Amritsar, you are in a school, you have to look for Punjab, your own state, to find out what are the problems of Punjab. What is the problem of Punjab? Personally, I feel corruption is the biggest challenge. And one of the greatest things about corruption is that even those who are corrupt, they don't feel that they are wrong. Look at one Patwari was caught taking bribes. All Patwaris have gone on strike. You know this in Punjab. Which means that the person who is taking bribes, he is morally so self-correct that he thinks he did nothing wrong and all others help him to, they have gone on strike. So you can take corruption as the issue and how it is affecting. For example, we never knew it that with the coming of this government, suddenly we found that the old leaders, they are not returning their cars given to the government, given by government. They are not vacating their flats and houses which are given by the government and they are no more entitled to it. Why this is happening? Right? So you can choose one, but then always remember whatever you choose, first try to define it, then try to work out that how as it has come up, then what are its effects, then come out that how it should be overcome or handled. That is always desirable, generally never happens so easily, simply because it requires so many things which have to take place, but still we think that something can be done. And but it is always going systematically. We always do that in our life. We look at some of the things we do regularly, and we do it periodically from our life. If we plan something new, we plan it beforehand that this is how we will do, how we'll do. Suppose we are going for shopping, we plan it, where to park our vehicle, where we should park it, what are the issues in that, and then we will go and do it. So all things involve some kind of critical thinking. Similarly, apply the same principle to it. Understand the nature, go for the explanation, what, why, how of it, and then go for the other direction. And have data. If you want to have data on Punjab, Government of Punjab has a lot of data on its website. So go to the website of Government of Punjab or particular department. You will find all the information. It is not that you will not find, yes. And if you put data or tables in whatever you are presenting in making sense of the issue, then it would be more effective.
Thank you, sir. So another question I had, and I was very curious to know, does sociological theories actually have a practical consequence?
Theories are not having, nothing has practical consequence except human action and collective action. We only make a kind of conclusion of the consequence of human behavior or collective behavior or human dynamics. Theory is about having consequences. Theory is putting a framework that looks this is done perhaps variable and weight. Theories are not far-based. Theories are making you and capable to implement certain important policy decisions and put them in a proper perspective that if we do this, this is how it is going to be.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your time and your guidance.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Internet connectivity problem
I'm
at this time.
Pranika of MA Sociology, second semester. On behalf of everyone, I am thanking you, sir, for this lightning lecture, as this lecture has really helped us in having a clear picture of sociological theories. As sir has rightly said that sociological theories is important because they provide us with a framework for explaining the social world around us. This tells us about the nature of social order or about the kinds of processes that influence social change. Theory without fact and fact without theory is a waste. Both have close relations. Fact is regarded as an empirical observation and refers to the relation between facts. I take this opportunity once again for helping us understand that why does theory matters. And I also thank all of our anthology clubbers, students and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for joining. I hope you will join us in the next series, which is scheduled the month of this. It would be on social inclusion and development issue, and the speaker for the series would be Dr. Niharika from University of Jammu. Please follow us on our Instagram page, which I shared with you, Sociology GNDU, to know about the dates when this series would be scheduled. So thank you everyone. Especially thank students from schools like Springdale and their teachers have joined us, and I saw some of the scholars who joined us from outside, Alia, Andrew, Adam. So I thank all my students as well. So thank you everyone. So have a great day.